Imagine looking in the mirror and seeing someone who wants to kill you. On November 6, 1996, in the peaceful city of Irvine, California, two identical twin sisters, sharing the same DNA, the same face, the same childhood, faced each other in a life-or-death confrontation. One lay curled up in a bathtub with her hands tightly bound, mouth sealed with duct tape. The other waited outside in a rental car, coldly awaiting news of the death of her very own other half. What could possibly turn the most sacred love into such profound hatred? Welcome to the Case Files, where we explore the most shocking cases in criminal history. I'm your guide on this journey into the darkest corners of human psychology, where the line between love and hatred is frighteningly thin. Today, we'll step into one of the most haunting and complex cases ever recorded in the United States. This isn't just a story about crime, but also a profound lesson about the destructive power of jealousy, the impact of childhood psychological trauma, and ultimately, the unbelievable miracle of forgiveness. In this episode, we're taking a deep dive into the infamous case of the Han twins' murder plot, the evil twin conspiracy, a case that shocked the Asian American community, became the subject of hundreds of international news articles, was broadcast live on court TV, and left indelible marks in California criminal history. The tragic beginning: two souls separated in Incheon. Our story begins in the port city of Incheon, South Korea, on a warm spring day, April 30th, 1974. Gina Han and Sunny Han were born like two drops of water, sharing the same face, the same birth cry. In East Asian culture, having twins is often considered a good omen, but for the Han family, it marked the beginning of a lifelong tragedy. Their parents' marriage had reached its end, like many other unhappy marriages in the post-Korean War years. But what was different here was their painful and extraordinary decision: to separate the twins. Gina was given to her father to raise, while Sunny stayed with their mother, Ms. Boo Nam Kim, a single woman with vague dreams of a better future. Can you imagine how two children felt when they first realized there was someone who looked exactly like them in this world? Modern psychologists have shown that separating twins, even for just a few hours, can leave deep emotional and self-identity wounds. For Gina and Sunny, the separation lasted 3 crucial years, the most important period for brain development and personality formation. It wasn't until they were 3 years old, in a reunion filled with tears and confusion, that the two sisters were finally able to live together. But the damage had already been done. Feelings of insecurity, fear of abandonment, and a strange sense of competition had silently formed in the hearts of these two children. They were everything to each other, yet also mortal enemies. The rocky journey to the American dream. In 1977, with $200 in her pocket and vague hope, Ms. Kim brought both her young daughters to the United States, settling in Orange County, California, a land dubbed Little Seoul, with the largest Korean community in America. But the American dream isn't always as bright as imagined. Reality in California was much harsher than Ms. Kim had expected. Unable to speak English and lacking appropriate job skills, she had to take manual labor jobs at minimum wage, from janitor to restaurant waitress to bar attendant. The loneliness in a foreign land, constant financial pressure, and homesickness pushed her down a path of self-destruction. Gambling. Long days at Las Vegas casinos and all-nighters playing cards with the Korean community in Santa Ana became her way of escaping harsh reality. This meant that Gina and Sunny, now only 5 to 6 years old, were frequently left alone. They had to cook for themselves, care for each other, and most importantly, learn to survive in an adult world without proper guidance. Seeds of jealousy in a loveless home. In an emotionally deprived environment, the relationship between the two sisters became frighteningly complex. Gina once shared in a pre-trial interview with a psychologist. "When I was growing up, Sunny was all I had. But at the same time, she was also the person who made me feel like I wasn't good enough. Why could two children with the same DNA and circumstances develop such negative emotions toward each other?" According to Gina, Sunny was more skillful at pleasing their mother. Sunny knew when to stay quiet, when to appear well-behaved, and most importantly, how to avoid Ms. Kim's angry outbursts when she came home after losing at gambling. Signs of favoritism, even if they might have been just Gina's subjective perception, planted the first seeds of jealousy. When Sunny was praised for doing homework well, Gina felt invisible. When Sunny was hugged by their mother when she cried, Gina had to wipe her own tears. These small details, accumulated over the years, created a deep emotional wound in Gina's young heart. Even worse, living in the same small room, sharing the same bed, the same clothes, the same toys made the personal boundaries between the two sisters blur. Gina couldn't find her own space to develop her individual identity. She always lived in Sunny's shadow, always being compared, always feeling like a defective copy of her sister. Arguments, from fighting over toys to blaming each other for breaking things, gradually escalated into physical violence. Neighbors frequently heard screaming, crying, and occasionally the sound of objects breaking. Sometimes the girls fought until their foreheads were bruised and bleeding, but when their mother came home, they would fall silent, as if nothing had happened. Time swung some glory at academic heights. But miraculously, despite their turbulent family situation and complex relationship with each other, both sisters showed exceptional intelligence. In the academic environment, where achievement was objectively measured by grades, both Gina and Sunny shone brilliantly. They learned English at an amazing speed, overcoming language and cultural barriers. While many other immigrant children struggled to adapt, the Han sisters became the most outstanding students in their classes. Mathematics, science, literature. No subject gave them difficulty. Was the pressure to succeed their way of coping with the chaos at home? Psychologists believe that for children living in unstable family environments, academic achievement often becomes their only source of confidence and way to attract positive attention from adults. The pinnacle of this effort was when both were honored as co-valedictorians at Campo High School with perfect 4.0 GPAs. This was a rare achievement, reached by only about 0.1% of students statewide in California. Standing on stage during graduation, both radiant in their caps and gowns, receiving applause from all teachers and friends. But no one suspected that this was also the last moment they would share glory together. From here, their paths would split into two branches, one leading upward, one leading into the abyss. The fatal fork, when two souls go different ways. Summer 1992, after high school graduation, the two sisters' lives began to diverge down completely opposite paths. Sunny received a full prestigious scholarship from the University of Laverne, a reputable private school known for business and law. With her excellent academic record and a moving essay about an immigrant girl's journey, Sunny had conquered the admissions committee. She stepped onto campus with sparkling, hopeful eyes, feeling she could finally escape the shadow of her family and freely pursue her dreams. But the real challenges began when Sunny discovered she was one of the few students from disadvantaged backgrounds at this school. Most of her classmates came from wealthy families in Orange County, with parents who were doctors, lawyers, or successful business people. They drove brand-new BMWs and Mercedes to school, wore designer clothes, and talked about European vacations as if they were normal. To fit into this environment, Sunny felt pressure to maintain an appropriate appearance. She began renting a red BMW 325i for $400 a month, an amount equal to her entire living allowance. She bought designer clothes from Nordstrom and Saks, even though she had to use credit cards. She joined expensive social clubs, dined at upscale restaurants, and tried to keep up with the lavish lifestyle of those around her. But maintaining this facade came at a steep price. The financial burden quickly exceeded Sunny's capabilities. To afford these expenses, she had to work part-time at a bar near school from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. This exhausted her, prevented her from concentrating on studies, and worse, it exposed her true circumstances. When Sunny's first boyfriend, a young man named Brad from a wealthy family, discovered she was working at a bar, he coldly broke up with her. "I can't date a girl who works as a server." These words were like a slap to Sunny's self-esteem, making her feel rejected and ashamed of her background. Heartbreak, combined with financial and academic pressure, made it impossible for Sunny to maintain her performance. Her grades dropped from A to C, then to D. At the end of her second year, she lost her scholarship and was forced to drop out. The college dream, her only hope to escape the cycle of poverty, had shattered. Sunny returned to Orange County, working as a receptionist at an office for minimum wage, feeling like a complete failure. Gina's military path, from hope to despair. While Sunny pursued college, Gina chose a completely different direction. Feeling unprepared for 4 years of college, and perhaps wanting to escape the shadow of her always praised sister, Gina decided to join the United States Air Force. This decision was driven by the military's attractive advertisements, opportunities to travel the world, free job training, and most importantly, escaping poverty. With excellent ASVAB, Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, scores, Gina was accepted into the Aviation Technical Training Program at Lackland Base in Texas. But military reality was much harsher than what Gina had imagined. The military environment with its iron discipline, strict schedule from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., and constant supervision crushed the spirit of freedom she had always craved. What happens when someone with high freedom needs gets trapped in a rigid system? Just after 1 month of basic training, Gina began to regret her decision. She wrote letters home, complaining about being woken up at 5 a.m., having to run 5 miles every day, and being constantly yelled at by training officers. But worse than that, she had to endure racist comments from some comrades who called her gook or chink when officers weren't around. Her jealousy toward Sunny, whom she thought was enjoying free life at college, grew day by day. In letters home, Gina wrote, "I hate this life. I hate these white guys. And I hate my sister for getting to live freely." The isolation, combined with jealousy and feeling trapped, pushed Gina into severe depression. Finally, after 2 years of miserable service, with help from a friend knowledgeable about law, Gina found a way to escape the military. At that time, the don't ask, don't tell policy was still in effect, allowing the military to exclude homosexuals. Gina falsely declared herself homosexual to be discharged early with a dishonorable record. The poison of proximity, when sisterly love becomes hell. In 1994, after Gina was discharged and Sunny dropped out, the two sisters reunited after 4 years apart. Both carried their own wounds and failures. Sunny had lost hope for the future, while Gina carried anger and a sense of betrayal by fate. In a rare moment of empathy, Sunny suggested the two sisters move in together in a small apartment in Placentia, Orange County. "Maybe we can help each other," Sunny said. "We can rebuild our lives and recapture those glorious high school days." Gina enthusiastically agreed, hoping this would be an opportunity for the two sisters to mend their relationship and climb up together. But that hope quickly turned into a nightmare. How could two people with the same DNA clash so severely? Years of separation hadn't dimmed the old conflicts at all, but only made them deeper and more complex. Their shared home wasn't a haven, but a constant battlefield. Gina, whose personality had become hard and hot-tempered after her time in the military, couldn't stand Sunny's habits. She didn't like how Sunny organized the house, didn't like the music Sunny listened to, and especially couldn't accept Sunny's frequent boyfriends coming and going. Sunny, once accustomed to freedom at college, also felt suffocated by Gina's control. The two sisters argued about everything: who had to wash, dishes, who had to pay the electricity bill, who got to use the bathroom first. These arguments often lasted hours and sometimes escalated into violence. Descending into the abyss, Gina's path of crime. Without clear direction after discharge, Gina got a job dealing cards at Casino Morongo, a local casino about an hour's drive from Orange County. This job seemed suitable for Gina at first glance. Decent pay, 15-hour plus tips, no high degree required, and flexible hours. But the casino environment was a major temptation for Gina, especially since she carried the gambling gene from her mother. After stressful work shifts, instead of going home, Gina often stayed to play poker or slot machines. What makes a person feel excited when betting their entire future? Initially, Gina only played with small amounts, treating it as entertainment. But gradually, when small wins created strong excitement, she began betting larger amounts. Big winning nights made Gina believe she could get rich from gambling, could change her life and prove to Sunny that she wasn't a loser. But like every gambler, Gina quickly fell into the spiral of losing more than winning. She lost all her salary money, then began borrowing from colleagues. When no one would lend anymore, she started down the path of crime. Gina's first theft was taking $500 from Aunt Heesuk's bank account, the woman who had sheltered and raised both sisters during their most difficult years. When her aunt discovered and confronted her, Gina made excuses that it was a temporary loan and promised to pay it back. But that money had vanished in that night's card games. The next theft was more serious. Gina secretly took the wallet, credit cards, and keys to Sunny's BMW. She used her sister's credit card to withdraw cash and buy unnecessary items, then sold them to get gambling money. She also drove Sunny's BMW everywhere, even to Las Vegas to gamble, causing the car to deteriorate seriously. The last straw, the fateful day of May 6, 1996. Everything reached its limit on an evening in late May 1996. Sunny returned home after a tiring workday and discovered her wallet had disappeared. Not only that, she received notifications from the bank about credit card usage exceeding the limit with suspicious transactions. When confronting Gina, she initially denied everything. But when Sunny presented evidence from bank security cameras showing images of Gina withdrawing money from her account, there was no other choice. Gina had to confess. "Why did you do this to me?" Sunny asked with a trembling voice. "We're blood sisters." Gina, with red eyes from lack of sleep and stress, exploded. "You always have everything. You're always loved by everyone. I only took what I deserved to have." The argument quickly escalated into a violent scuffle. According to Sunny's later court testimony, during the conflict, Gina completely lost control and pulled out a .22 caliber handgun, a gun she had bought on the black market for $200. "I'm going to kill you," Gina screamed, pointing the gun at Sunny. "I'm going to finish you so I can live my own life." Faced with a gun barrel from her own twin sister, someone she had loved and protected for so many years, Sunny was completely panicked. In extreme fear, she realized this was no longer an ordinary family argument, but a real threat to her life. With trembling hands, Sunny did something she had never thought of. She crawled toward the phone and dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? Please help me. My sister. She has a gun. She wants to kill me. Orange County Police received the call at 6:47 p.m. and immediately dispatched 2 patrol cars to the address in Placentia. When they arrived, the situation was under control. Gina had put down the gun and was sitting in the living room, sobbing. Based on Sunny's testimony, bank security cameras, and evidence of theft, Gina Han was arrested on the spot. She was charged with property theft, weapon threats, and credit card abuse. After a quick trial, Gina received an 18-month sentence and was transferred to Las Colinas Detention Center in San Diego. Festering hatred behind bars. For Gina, being turned in to police by her own sister was an unforgivable betrayal. During the dark months at Las Colinas jail, instead of using the time for reflection and remorse, Gina's hatred towards Sunny grew day by day, like a malignant tumor. What happens in someone's mind when they feel betrayed by their closest person? In letters that Gina wrote but never sent, found later in her cell, she expressed terrifying levels of hatred. Sunny has ruined my life. She has taken everything I had. Now I will take the only thing she has, her life. Gina began planning in detail for a cruel revenge. She studied murder cases, learned how to hide evidence, and most importantly, sought people willing to help her carry out this plan. Thanks to good behavior and active participation in educational programs in prison, in October 1996, Gina was granted temporary release permits to participate in a community reintegration preparation program, a humanitarian policy for model prisoners about to complete their sentences. Only less than a month remained until she was completely free. But instead of preparing for a new life, Gina used this precious time to prepare for the most horrific crime of her life. The deadly alliance, recruiting young accomplices. During her time allowed outside, Gina approached 2 teenagers she knew, John Syarath, 15 years old, a Laotian teenager from a difficult background, and Archie Bryant, 16 years old, a black young man who had dropped out of school and was unemployed. Both were society's dropouts, living in poor areas of Orange County, with no clear future and always needing money. For John Syarath, $100 could buy food for a whole week. For Archie Bryant, it was money to buy new clothes and possibly impress his girlfriend. But Gina didn't tell them that the important job was actually murder. She only said they needed to intimidate her sister a little, to retrieve some belongings that Sunny had unfairly kept. Gina skillfully exploited the psychology of these youths, telling them about how Sunny had betrayed her, about how her sister lived in a nice apartment while she had to sleep on someone's sofa. "You guys just need to help me get back what belongs to me," Gina said persuasively. "Nothing serious, just scare her a little. Scare her a little." Preparing for attack. The terrifying details. The morning of November 6th, 1996, a day that would change the lives of everyone involved, Gina drove an old Honda Civic with her 2 young accomplices to a shopping center in Buena Park to buy equipment. Their shopping list was like a formula for organized murder. Super adhesive gray duct tape, black rubber gloves, 50-foot electrical wire, 1 large potato, large black garbage bags. The detail about the potato was particularly ghastly. According to Archie Bryant's later testimony, Gina had instructed them how to use the potato as a homemade silencer. They drove to a deserted area in Santa Ana, where Archie attached the potato to the .22 caliber gun barrel and test-fired a shot into an old trash can. The gunshot was almost silent, Archie recalled at trial. The potato reduced the noise to just like a small firecracker. The plan was meticulously laid out by Gina like an action movie script. She would wait in the car, engine always running ready for escape. John and Archie would pretend to be magazine salespeople, knock on the door, and rush in when someone opened it. They would tie up Sunny and her roommate, if any. Then take Sunny to the basement to handle. Remember to make sure she can't scream or call for help, Gina instructed. And remember to take all cash and jewelry to make it look like an ordinary robbery. The attack in Irvine, 47 minutes of terror. 4:30 p.m. On November 6, 1996, the blue Honda Civic stopped in front of the Turtle Rock apartment complex in Irvine, a safe area with residents mainly college students and young families. Gina chose a parking spot about 100 meters from Sunny's apartment, far enough not to be seen, but close enough to observe. Apartment 2B on the second floor, where Sunny lived with Helen Kim, a 22-year-old Korean girl studying for an MBA at UC Irvine. The two girls had become close friends after 2 years of living together, sharing not just rent, but also dreams for the future. At that time, in the apartment, Sunny was preparing dinner for both after a tiring day at the insurance company, where she worked as a receptionist. Helen had just returned from school, sitting at her study desk, preparing for final exams. 4:45 p.m., John Syrath and Archie Bryant, both wearing jeans and black t-shirts, walked up the stairs to the second floor. In John's bag was the loaded gun, duct tape, and rope. Archie carried a clipboard and some fake flyers about magazine subscription services. Knock, knock, knock. "Who is it?" Sunny's voice from inside. "We're from Orange County Magazine, ma'am. We have a special promotion for students in this area." Helen, sitting closer to the door, stood up and looked through the peephole. She saw two young men who seemed harmless, one black, one Asian, both carrying clipboards and flyers. "We're not interested, thank you," Helen said through the door. "Ma'am, it'll only take 2 minutes. We have a free gift for you if you listen to our presentation." This was the fateful moment. Helen, with the kindness commonly seen in young people, opened the door. She only opened it a crack. The chain lock still hooked, but it was enough. In a flash, Archie pushed the door hard, breaking the chain lock. John immediately drew the gun and pointed it at Helen, while Archie rushed inside to control Sunny, who was standing at the kitchen just a few meters away. "Don't scream. Don't move," John shouted, his voice trembling with fear and adrenaline. But in that chaotic moment, Sunny did something that saved her life. Before being approached by Archie, she managed to grab the Samsung cordless phone from the kitchen counter, dial 911, and press call. She couldn't say anything, but the line was connected. 4:47 p.m. at the Orange County 911 dispatch. 911, what is your emergency? No response, only faint sounds of muffled screaming, struggling, and objects falling and breaking. Hello? Hello? Is anyone there? Operator Patricia Williams, with 15 years of experience, immediately recognized this as a real emergency call. She looked up the phone number and confirmed the address. 2500 Michelson Drive, Apartment 2B, Irvine. Dispatch, we have a silent 911 call from Irvine. Sounds like there's an armed break-in in progress. Deploy all nearest units to the scene immediately. Inside the apartment, 47 minutes of horror. While the operator was dispatching police, inside the apartment, the real nightmare began. Sunny and Helen were forced to sit on the living room floor. Archie used duct tape to cover both their mouths, while John used electrical wire to tie their hands behind their backs. Both girls were crying, eyes wide with terror. "Where's the money?" John asked, still holding the gun. "Where's the jewelry?" Helen nodded toward her bedroom. Archie ransacked and found about $200 in cash, a Seiko watch, and some small, valuable jewelry. But this wasn't their real purpose. After robbing, John dragged both girls into the small bathroom and forced them to sit in the bathtub. The intention to kill Sunny was now clear. At this point, Archie ran downstairs to report the situation to Gina. She was sitting in the car, holding keys, ready to start the engine. "How's it going?" Gina asked. "We've controlled both of them. John is keeping them in the bathroom. Good. Now finish this. But right then, from the distance, police sirens began to sound. Timely rescue. 4:52 p.m. Two Irvine PD police cars with blaring sirens appeared at the end of the street. Officer Michael Chen and Officer Sarah Rodriguez were the first to arrive at the scene. Hearing police sirens, Gina and Archie panicked. "Run! Run now!" Gina screamed, starting the car and speeding away at high speed. Inside the apartment, John Syarath was in a dilemma. The plan had failed. Police had arrived. In panic, he quickly removed the duct tape and cut the rope from both girls. Sorry, John said, his voice trembling. This was just a prank. Please tell the police this was just a prank. But everything was too late. Police had surrounded the building. Officer Chen and two other officers had reached the second floor, guns drawn, ready for any situation. "Irvine police! Open the door!" The apartment door opened. John Syarath stepped out with hands raised high, the gun placed on the floor. Behind him, Sunny and Helen hugged each other crying, both still bearing traces of duct tape on their mouths and small wounds on their wrists from the tight ropes. How many attackers were there? Officer Rodriguez asked. 2 more people. They ran away. A woman and a man. They left in a blue car. Sunny answered between sobs. The chase and arrest. While John was arrested at the scene, Gina and Archie had driven south at high speed on the I-405 freeway. But escape was not simple. First mistake. On the run, with terrifying coldness, Gina stopped at an ATM and used Sunny's bank card to withdraw $5,000, the entire amount in the account. This transaction left an electronic trail with exact time and location. Second mistake. Both drove to San Diego intending to rent another car to hide their tracks. But at a car rental shop in La Jolla, the employee became suspicious when Gina wanted to pay cash for an expensive car and demanded to take it immediately. 6:30 p.m., San Diego police, after receiving the APB from Irvine PD, found the blue Honda Civic in the rental shop's parking lot. Gina and Archie were arrested while trying to negotiate rental prices. When arrested, Gina was completely calm, almost emotionless. "I don't know what you're talking about," she told the officers. "We were just traveling." Investigation and undeniable evidence. Detective Lisa Park of Irvine PD, an expert on organized crime, led the investigation. Within 48 hours, she had built a solid case against all 3 defendants. Physical evidence. The .22 caliber gun with fingerprints from both John and Gina. Duct tape and electrical wire purchased from the store, with receipt signed by Archie. ATM transaction showing Gina withdrew Sunny's money after the attack. Car rental employee testimony about suspicious behavior. Witness evidence. Sunny and Helen's testimony about attack. Details. Witnesses who saw all 3 defendants buying equipment together. Recording of the 911 call with sounds of struggle. John and Archie's testimony about Gina recruiting them. But the most important evidence was John Syarath's testimony. Facing a possible life sentence, he decided to cooperate with police and tell the whole truth. Gina told us she wanted to teach her sister a lesson, John testified. At first she only said to intimidate, but then she said, "We had to finish Miss Sunny, so she couldn't harm Gina anymore." The trial of the century, when culture becomes a defense weapon. On September 15, 1997, the trial, People vs. Gina Han, John Syarath, and Archie Bryant, officially opened at the Orange County Superior Court in Santa Ana. This was one of the most watched trials in California history, broadcast live on court TV and attracting international media attention. Judge Ronald Kreber, with 25 years of experience, presided over the trial. The jury consisted of 12 people, 6 men, 6 women, including 3 Asian Americans, 2 Latinos, 1 black person, and 6 white people. an accurate reflection of Orange County's ethnic diversity. Prosecution's argument. Deputy District Attorney Bruce Moore, a veteran prosecutor with 15 years of experience in murder cases, opened with a strong indictment. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is not a story about an ordinary family argument. This is a story about cold calculation, about a meticulously planned murder plot by a woman who wanted to take the life of her own twin sister. Moore presented a systematic chain of evidence. Motive. Gina hated Sunny for betraying her by reporting the theft to police. Many witnesses heard Gina say, "I will kill her. I won't let her live while I have to die in prison." Planning. The purchase of equipment, duct tape, rope, gloves, garbage bags, and preparation of a silencer proved this wasn't a spontaneous act. Action. All three defendants executed exactly according to plan, only failing because Sunny managed to call 911. If not for that call, Moore concluded, we would be investigating a murder, not a conspiracy to commit murder. Defense strategy, the culture card. Deputy Public Defender Roger Alexander, Gina's lawyer, used a unique and controversial defense strategy, centering on cultural differences. Main argument. In Korean culture, saying "I will kill you" when angry is a common expression, hyperbole, no different from Americans saying "I could kill you" when annoyed. This was not a real threat. To prove this argument, the defense team invited Dr. Sung-Hwan Park, a linguistics professor at USC, as an expert witness. In Korean, the phrase "jugye buril guya," "I will kill you," is used very frequently in families during conflicts, Dr. Park explained. This is an emotional expression, not a real threat. Like Americans saying, "I'm gonna kill him," when someone makes them angry. Community response. 17,000 signatures calling for leniency. The cultural argument created a wave of support from the Korean American community. They believed Gina was being prosecuted too harshly due to cultural misunderstanding. Reverend James Chai, pastor of the largest Korean church in Orange County, organized a global campaign. Within 6 weeks, they collected 17,047 signatures from South Korea calling for leniency, 4,156 signatures from the Korean community in California, letters of support from 127 cultural and religious organizations. "We are not defending violent behavior," Reverend Chai said at a press conference. "But we believe there is a deep cultural misunderstanding here. Gina Han is not a cold-blooded killer, as the media is portraying. Media is important witnesses." The trial heard testimony from 47 witnesses over 4 weeks. Some notable testimonies. Sunny Han, primary victim. "My sister said many times that she would kill me. At first I thought it was just angry words. But when I saw the gun in her hands, I knew she meant it." John Sayarath, cooperating accomplice. "Gina clearly told us that we had to kill Sunny. She said, 'I want her to disappear from my life forever.' There was no misunderstanding here." Dr. Patricia Williams, psychology expert. "Gina Han shows signs of antisocial personality disorder. She has the ability to manipulate others and feels no guilt about her actions." Historic verdict, November 20th, 1997. After 10 hours of deliberation over 3 days, the jury of 6 men and 6 women delivered their verdict at 3:45 p.m. on November 20th, 1997. Throughout the deliberation process, there were strange details that defense lawyers could never forget. Laughter echoing from the jury room, even just minutes before they announced they had reached a decision. Perhaps they didn't realize the seriousness of the case, lawyer Roger Alexander commented with frustration. When Judge Ronald Kreber began reading the verdict, a process that lasted 20 minutes with dozens of charges, the entire courtroom fell into absolute silence. Gina Han sat upright, her red-rimmed eyes staring intently at the jury. The people she had hoped for weeks, would understand her circumstances. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, we find the defendant, Gina Han, guilty. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom like a death sentence. Gina Han's head dropped, tears beginning to fall. This wasn't just a legal verdict, but the end of a life, of dreams, and of any hope for a future outside prison walls. Detailed verdict results. Gina Han, conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree. Guilty. Grand theft in the first degree. Guilty. Petty theft in the second degree. Guilty. False imprisonment with violence, 2 counts. Guilty. Use of a weapon during commission of a felony. Guilty. John Sayarath, 15 years old. Guilty on all similar charges. Archie Bryant, 16 years old. Guilty on all similar charges. When the final verdict was read, Gina Han couldn't control her emotions. She sobbed uncontrollably, not for herself, but for the 2 teenagers who had been swept into her self-destructive tornado. "I destroyed their lives," she whispered to her lawyer. They were just kids. Sentencing hearing, the fateful day of January the 16th, 1998. 2 months after the verdict, the sentencing hearing took place in an atmosphere of extreme tension. This was the first time since the incident that Gina Han was allowed to speak before the court. Judge Kreber, with 25 years of experience in sentencing serious criminals, stated, "This case is not just a crime against an individual, but a crime against the sacred nature of family bonds. The defendant has abused trust, love, and blood ties to commit the most heinous act this court has ever witnessed." When asked if she wanted to say anything before receiving her sentence, Gina Han stood up on trembling legs. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I want to tell Sister Sunny that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for letting anger and jealousy overshadow our sisterly bond. I had absolutely no intention of harming her. Sunny is my flesh and blood, the other half of my soul. I made a terrible mistake, and I will have to live with this regret for the rest of my life." Final sentences. Gina Han, 26 years to life in prison, plus 1 additional year for weapons charges. John Sayarath, 16 years to life in prison. Archie Bryant, 18 years in prison, later reduced to 8 years for cooperation with authorities. Years behind bars. The journey of redemption. Gina Han entered Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla in March 1998 at age 24, an age when most other women were building careers and families. This prison, known as one of the strictest female detention facilities in California, would become her home for more than 2 decades. The early days in prison were full of hardships. Gina had to face contempt from other inmates, who considered her a family traitor, a charge considered most despicable in the criminal world. There were nights she lay on the hard bed, listening to other women crying, wondering if she still deserved to be called human. But instead of wallowing in self-pity, Gina chose the path of redemption. In 2000, she began participating in prison education programs, completing her General Education Diploma, GED, with perfect scores. Not stopping there, she continued pursuing a bachelor's degree in psychology through California State University, Sacramento. For 8 years, Gina spent 6 to 8 hours daily studying, aiming to better understand human psychology and the factors that led to her heinous actions. In 2008, Gina graduated with a bachelor's in psychology with a 3.82 GPA, becoming one of the few inmates to achieve the highest academic performance in Chowchilla prison history. But more important was the spiritual transformation. She began participating in counseling programs for young inmates, especially those with backgrounds similar to hers. Warden Patricia Gomez noted, Gina Han has become a completely different person. She is no longer the hate-filled woman we received 10 years ago. For Sunny's unimaginable forgiveness. While Gina was struggling to reform herself behind bars, Sunny Han also had to go through her own healing journey. The early years after the incident, she lived in constant fear, had to change addresses multiple times, and underwent psychological treatment to cope with PTSD. But time worked a miracle. In 2005, 9 years after the incident, Sunny received a letter from Chowchilla Prison. It wasn't an ordinary apology letter, but a 15-page essay that Gina had written as part of her psychological therapy program. In that letter, Gina didn't just apologize, but also deeply analyzed her own psychology, the factors that led to her heinous actions, and the path she had taken to change herself. She wrote, "Now I understand that you and I are two separate individuals, each with our own value and path. I don't need to be you to have worth. I can love you without needing to be jealous or compare. I ask you to forgive me, not because I deserve it, but because you deserve to be free from the pain I caused." This letter created a profound transformation in Sunny's heart. For the first time in years, she felt the burden of hatred beginning to dissolve. I realized that forgiving Gina wasn't a gift for her, but a gift I gave to myself. Sunny shared in a rare 2010 interview. The parole campaign, when victim becomes advocate. In 2012, when Gina had served 14 years, Sunny began a tireless campaign to help her sister get early parole. This was a shocking action in California legal circles. Never before had a victim become the strongest advocate for the parole of someone who had conspired to kill them. Sunny began by writing letters to the California Parole Board. I understand this may seem unusual, even incomprehensible to many people. How can someone support parole for someone who wanted to take their life? But I believe true justice lies not only in punishment, but also in allowing redemption and change. Over the years, I have witnessed Jean's profound transformation. She has used her time in prison most effectively possible, studying, participating in rehabilitation programs, and most importantly, developing the empathy she previously lacked. I am not asking you to forgive her actions. Those actions are unforgivable. But I ask you to look at the person she has become and consider whether continuing to imprison her truly serves the purpose of justice. Sunny didn't stop at writing letters. She began appearing at parole board hearings every time Gina applied for parole, 2012, 2014, 2016. Each time was rejected, but Sunny didn't give up. The decisive hearing, May 2017. The final parole hearing took place on May 15, 2017, at Chowchilla Prison. This was the first time in 21 years that Sunny and Gina met, not in the roles of victim and criminal, but as two sisters trying to mend their relationship. The California Parole Board consisted of Timothy Verga, chairman, former Superior Court judge; Connie Schaefer, criminal psychology expert; Michael Berger, prosecutor representative; Gina Han, at age 43, hair streaked with white, sat facing the board in orange prison uniform. She had prepared for this moment for years, and now the final opportunity to prove her transformation had arrived. Chairman Verga: Ms. Han, in the past 20 years, you've had time to reflect on your actions. Can you tell us about the changes you've undergone? Gina Han: Your Honor, when I was young, I was a person full of hatred and jealousy. I didn't understand the value of family, of sisterly love, and of human life. I only saw what I thought I lacked instead of what I already had. In the past 20 years, I have spent every day trying to better understand myself and the harm I caused. I have learned that my actions didn't just affect Sister Sunny, but also affected the two boys, John and Archie, affected their families, and affected the entire community. I cannot change the past, but I can commit that I will never repeat those mistakes. I have learned to love without jealousy, to respect without comparing, and to live without harming others. Chairman Verga. Ms. Sunny Han, would you like to address the board? Sunny Han. Your Honors, I stand here today not to defend my sister's actions in 1996. Those actions were wrong and deserving of condemnation. But I stand here to testify to the change I have witnessed over the past 10 years. The woman sitting there is no longer the hate-filled sister I once knew. Through letters, through conversations, I have seen a person full of remorse, full of empathy, and eager to make amends. I believe Jean has paid a fair price for her actions. 20 years is a large portion of one's life. Now, I believe she can contribute positively to society rather than just consuming public resources. Historic decision. After 4 hours of deliberation, the California Parole Board made a decision by a 2-1 vote to approve Gina Han's parole application. This was a shocking decision, as only 7% of parole applications for murder charges are approved in California. Chairman Verga read the decision. After careful consideration of all factors, the severity of the crime, the inmate's rehabilitation process, likelihood of reoffense, and especially the support from the victim herself, we decide to approve Ms. Gina Han's parole application. But the road to freedom was still not smooth. Under California law, parole decisions must receive final approval from Governor Jerry Brown. And more importantly, the Orange County District Attorney's Office strongly opposed the decision. The final legal battle. District Attorney Tony Rackauckas of Orange County wrote a 47-page letter to Governor Brown opposing the parole decision. Gina Han committed one of the most heinous crimes in our county's history. Paroling her after only 20 years would send the wrong message that serious crimes can be shown leniency. We believe she remains dangerous and should not be released into society. But on February 20th, 2018, Governor Jerry Brown, in one of his final decisions in office, approved the parole decision. On May 15, 2018, after 22 years of imprisonment, Gina Han walked out of the gates of Central California Women's Facility. At age 44, with gray hair and a face marked by time, she breathed free air for the first time since 1996. But complete freedom had not yet arrived. Since she was not a U.S. citizen, Gina was immediately detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, IC, and faced the risk of deportation to South Korea, a country she had left when she was only 3 years old. Me formed the silence of peace. Since May 2018, a veil of silence has covered the lives of both Han sisters. They have actively and completely withdrawn from public attention, refusing all interview requests from press and media. No one knows for certain whether Gina was ultimately deported to South Korea, whether the two sisters actually reunited and live harmoniously, what their current relationship is like, where Gina is living, and what work she's doing. The only certainty is they chose peace over fame, chose to rebuild their lives in private rather than continue being a sensational story in newspapers. Some unverified sources suggest Gina is currently living in a small city in Northern California, working at a nonprofit organization supporting women's reintegration into society after prison. Sunny still lives in Orange County, has married, and has her own family. But all of this is just speculation. The truth belongs to the two of them, and they have chosen to keep it to themselves. Conclusion. Timeless lessons. The Han twins' case is not simply a story about crime, but a mirror reflecting the deepest dark corners of the human soul. It shows us that jealousy, if uncontrolled, can become a poison that destroys everything most precious in life. Gina and Sunny had the same DNA, same beginning, same potential, but jealousy transformed sacred sisterly love into cruel hatred. Childhood wounds can profoundly and lastingly shape behavior. The early separation, unstable family environment, and feelings of favoritism created a chain reaction leading to tragedy. Pressure to fit in and maintain image can drive people to wrong decisions. Both Sunny, renting a BMW to fit in, and Gina, gambling to escape reality, fell into this trap. But most importantly, this story proves the extraordinary power of forgiveness and human capacity for change. Sunny's actions transcended all conventional logic, proving that love can triumph over hatred, and redemption can occur even in the most desperate circumstances. Impact and legacy. The Han twins case left deep marks. In the justice system, this was one of the rare cases where a victim became the strongest advocate for the perpetrator's parole, setting precedent for similar cases. In psychological research, the case became an important case study in twin psychology research, environmental influence on behavior, and criminal rehabilitation processes. In popular culture, the story has been adapted into numerous documentaries, books, and television programs, becoming part of American criminal culture. Unanswered questions. To this day, there remain big questions that only Gina and Sunny can answer. Has Gina's hatred truly dissipated? Or is it just sleeping, waiting for some trigger to awaken? Is Sunny's forgiveness truly from the bottom of her heart? Or is it just a way for her to free herself from the victim role? Can the two sisters truly live harmoniously like normal people? Or will the scars from the past forever separate them? And most importantly, was justice served? Were 22 years in prison enough payment for a murder conspiracy? Or are forgiveness and second chances more important than punishment? Final message. In an increasingly divided world, where hatred seems easier than love, the story of Gina and Sunny Han delivers a powerful message. No wound is too deep to heal, no sin too heavy to forgive, and no person too evil to change. But what matters is that we must choose. Choose love over hatred. Choose forgiveness over revenge. Choose hope over despair. Today, when their story is retold, we remember not just a cruel murder conspiracy, but also a painful journey leading to redemption. We remember two people, two halves of a whole, who found their way back to each other after wandering too far apart. Thank you for following the case files on this journey, exploring one of the most complex and haunting cases in American criminal history. The story of Gina and Sunny Han is not just about crime and punishment, but also about forgiveness, redemption, and the power of human compassion. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss other intriguing cases. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Could you forgive someone who wanted to take your life? Do you think 22 years in prison was fair justice for Gina's crime? What would have happened if Sunny hadn't been able to call 911 in time? Don't forget to like this video if you found it valuable, and share it with friends who love true crime. Your support motivates us to continue bringing quality stories. See you again in the next episode of The Case Files, where we'll explore another mysterious case from the world of crime. Until then, stay curious, stay safe,